All right, and let me go ahead and start the presentation. Okay, so again, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining us today. My name is Danielle Goldstein. I'm the Associate Director of Graduate Admissions at the Elliott School of International Affairs here at the George Washington University. I am thrilled to be speaking with all of you today as we are so lucky to have some of our strongest students at the Elliott School join us from the Lahore University of Management Sciences. So we're really excited to talk with you. Before we get started, I'll just give you a quick preview of how we'll use our time together today. So first, I'll give an overview of our master's program options and the foundations that you'll find across all of our programs. Then we'll look at what you can expect in terms of a return on your investment in a graduate degree in the field of international affairs. After that, I'll walk through some of the resources for student and graduate success that everyone in the Elliott School has from the day you are admitted until the day you retire. Next, I'll introduce you to our wonderful alumna that we have joining us, Mariam Nusrat, so you can hear more about the Elliott School directly from someone who was once in your shoes. After that, I'll quickly cover some practical details about application requirements and deadlines. And finally, I'll pause for questions several times throughout the session, but we will make sure that we answer all of them by the end of our time together today. So if you have any questions, start thinking of those. We'll have plenty of time to address them. So I'll go ahead and jump right into the options that you have in terms of the programs that we offer. The Elliott School offers 8 Master of Arts programs. We have 2 specialized master's degrees. We also have 2 joint degree options. And starting for the first time next year, we are offering a brand new Master of Science in International Science and Technology Policy. All of our programs are interdisciplinary. They cover a wide range of topics. Each program offers anywhere between 4 and 15 plus concentrations that students can choose from. And some programs allow students to choose multiple concentrations or even create your own. So there's a ton of flexibility built into your degree. Most of our Master of Arts programs take about 2 years to complete if you enroll full-time. And our new Master of Science program actually takes about a year and a half. It's a bit of an expedited program. Some of our most popular master's programs are International Affairs, Security Policy Studies, and International Development Studies. Now let's talk about some of the strongest features of our school that you'll find across all of our programs, all of which contribute to the value of your Elliott School degree. One of the biggest keys to our entire student experience framework is the flexibility that's built into your degree program. So we offer both a fall and a spring start, which means you can start your program whenever the timing is right for you. We also offer flexibility in our study abroad opportunities, allowing students to study for a full semester at one of our international partner institutions or enroll in a short-term, say 1 to 2 week study abroad program, or even conduct your capstone field research abroad. Next, I'll talk about the strategy behind why we offer all of our courses in the evenings. Our programs were built with students' best professional interests in mind, allowing students to take advantage of our unique location. So since all of our courses begin at 5 p.m. or later, students have the opportunity to work, hold an internship, or volunteer during the day, and then come to campus in the evening. The capstone experience will likely be one of the most memorable and impactful parts of all of your studies because of how it brings together everything you've learned and applies it in a hands-on, real-world scenario. The capstone course is completed over 2 consecutive semesters, where you'll sign up for a class based on a thematic topic. That could be something like foreign policy or international security. You'll form small groups of 3 to 4 people to formulate a research proposal. And then you'll work with an outside client to determine your deliverables. And the skills that you develop through this process and by completing your final research paper and giving your final presentation all really prepare you for employment immediately after graduation. And lastly, another favorite element that all of our programs share is our skills courses. So these courses were built around feedback that our Graduate Student Services Office receives from surveys that they send to domestic and international employers so that students can stay up to date on the skills that employers are looking for in competitive candidates for careers and internships at their organizations. I mentioned before about our unique location, and I don't just mean that we're in Washington, D.C. The Elliott School is located across the street from the State Department. We are about 2.5 blocks from the White House. If you keep walking past the White House on the other side, you'll find the USAID headquarters. Students with internships at the World Bank or the IMF can make it to class in about 5 minutes. It's just down the road from us. So a lot of schools point out their DC location, but the Elliott School is truly positioned perfectly among the landmark centers for international affairs. That has a huge impact on the kinds of speakers, events, and access that the Elliott School has, and our world-renowned faculty can connect you with as a student or an alum. Now let's look at the value that a master's from the Elliott School typically yields for graduates. This statistics gives you a helpful summary of the immediate value of an Elliott School degree. 95% of our graduates are employed within 6 months of graduation. They're in fields and careers that they want to make an investment in, and the master's degree almost invariably means a salary increase in the short term. Many of the remaining 5% choose to pursue even more education after leaving the Elliott School. So what we're looking at here is a really strong measure of student and graduate success. And what about the long-term value? So earlier I mentioned that the value of our degrees starts accumulating from the time you're admitted until the time you retire. And here's what I mean by that. As soon as you're admitted to one of our degree programs, you can start to have some serious conversations about your career objectives and connect with some of the folks in our graduate student services department. So when you are a student, we bring together a comprehensive team that works together to help align your plan of study with your career goals. In addition to your program director, our Graduate Student Services Office provides support through academic advising, career coaching, and international education. This team works collaboratively to uncover and clarify your career aspirations, help you choose the concentration, electives, and skills courses that will benefit you most, and to connect you with the professionals, internships, events, and opportunities that will set you up for success both while you're a student and after graduation. And as an alum, you'll retain lifetime access to the staff and resources in our career development office. So if you ever decide to change careers or explore different opportunities, they'll be there to assist you and help you leverage the best of the Elliott School's network and resources. They can help you with networking, connect you with workshops and seminars for professional development. You have access to our site visit program opportunities, and they can also, of course, help polish your resume and help you practice interview techniques. As an alum, you'll also retain access to Handshake, which is GW's online career database for job and internship listings with right now more than 9,000 employers. All right, so you've heard plenty from me about the unique benefits of studying at the Elliott School, but now I want you to hear all of it firsthand. So I am thrilled today to be joined by an alumna of both the Elliott School and LUMS, Mariam Nusrat. Forbes' Next 1K Entrepreneur, Clinton Global Honoree, TEDx speaker, and winner of the Entrepreneur Elevator Pitch Show, Mariam Nusrat is a US-based Pakistani entrepreneur with 11 years in the purposeful video game sector and 15 years of experience in the ed tech space, working at the World Bank across 22 different countries. Mariam is the founder and CEO of Freshna.io, a tech platform that empowers users to create, share, and monetize their own purposeful video games with no code and at lightning speed. Think Canva for games. The platform has 180,000 registered game makers, 160,000 plus games published, and over 2 million game clicks. Mariam has raised $2.6 million in seed funding for Freshna from investors including Paris Hilton and Randy Zuckerberg. Mariam is on a mission to empower the next 100 million people to tell their stories through video games. All right, so I'm going to ask a few questions of Mariam to get us kicked off, but we want to hear what questions you all have. So go ahead and start thinking of what questions you have for Miriam and type those into the chat, and we'll get to them shortly. So Miriam, can you start off just by giving us an overview of the path that your career has taken so far?
Hi, Daniel. Thank you so much for having me. Hi, everyone. This is very nostalgic for me because I have two of my alma mater, LUMS and Elliott School in one place. So super excited. And once again, like Daniel said, I hope to add value here. So if you have any questions, very happy to answer those. But diving right in, I love that question, Danielle, because I mean, just to give context, like as a timeline, I'm born and raised in Pakistan, and I used to live in Islamabad, and I did my bachelor's degree as a distance learning program from London School of Economics. So people who are in Pakistan are probably aware of it. There's an external degree program that you can do from LSE, which you do while you're still in Pakistan. Following that, I applied to LUMS for my master's in econ. And right out of LUMS, and that was in 2010, I actually joined the World Bank at the country office as a consultant. And I did that for around 3 years before deciding that I wanted to move to the World Bank headquarters. And one of the things that I realized was that I would need an international degree as I was making that shift. And, being in DC, being at the World Bank, truly, when Danielle says that GW is the backyard of international development, I truly think that. I mean, I used to walk from my office to class in less than 8 minutes, stopping along at Whole Foods along the way, or just grabbing a snack at CVS. So really, truly, the proximity is really, really powerful. I applied to Johns Hopkins, I applied to Georgetown University and GW, got accepted to all three and chose GW because of a very cool scholarship, because of the proximity, and because of actually the profile of all of the professors. So we'll go more into GW and the value that added. But yeah, so I mean, basically moved to DC, started working and doing my second master's degree at the same time. So while I was at GW, and again, because it's evening classes, you're able to do both, you're able to work. Most of my class fellows were all working and studying at the same time. And then while I was in school, and I think this is one of the most transformative things that I could have never expected would come out of Elliott School, was actually this social venture around gaming and purposeful games, which I started as a student project, ending up presenting it on stage with President Clinton, through Elliott School, through GW, through the CGIU program. That just got momentum, did that on the side for 11 years. So I was working, I was studying, and I was running my own not-for-profit gaming studio just on the side. And then eventually, 3 years ago, we started our own venture-backed startup. So I became a tech founder. I gave myself the goal of raising $1 million and then quitting my World Bank job, which was my dad's dream job for me. So I quit my dad's dream job to go pursue my own dream job. And yeah, my managers at the World Bank, by now I was a staff. I was one of the youngest economists at the World Bank, education economist. And that was something that was just so interesting to me that at the end, I asked my manager to quit the bank. She told me that I could take a sabbatical, that they would hold my job for me, just as financial security in case I decided to come back. There's very few people who join the bank and then leave the bank. So I think for them, it was like, are you sure about this? So, took a sabbatical for 2 years. In February of this year, I transitioned full time into being a tech founder. And now that's what I'm doing. So it's kind of wild to me. It's like, I mean, all of this has been around since 2010. So like 15 years in the making, but it's kind of wild to me. If I kind of punctuate it, right outside of LUMS, I got my World Bank degree, and then I got my World Bank job as a consultant at the country office. And then GW is literally where my social impact gaming studio, Grid and Brushna, were born. So it's kind of insane to me to just connect that dots. But yeah, that's been my journey over the past 15 years.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So you answered some of this, but kind of to touch on the second part of the question a little bit more, what made you decide to pursue a master's degree in international affairs? And specifically, why did you choose the Elliott School?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think one of the coolest things, it's like, I mean, when you're working at the World Bank, right? It's like, I mean, so I was in third grade when my dad actually went to a course at LUMS. So he was in the public service. He went to do like, one of those executive program courses at REDC. Everyone who's like connected to LUMS probably knows what I'm talking about. And he went there and he came back. And guys, I'm in third grade, and he puts in front of me three logos. One was LUMS, the first logo. Then it said London School of Economics, and then the third logo was World Bank. So he's like, "You're gonna be an economist, and you're gonna go work at the World Bank." And I'm like, "This is wild! Like, whatever happened to doctor and engineer? We could have kept these things simple." And I at that time thought the World Bank was, like a commercial bank that gives loans to people. I had no idea what the World Bank did. But third grade, I had my path set out for me. So international development was always something that I like, just like aspired from my dad and took it and just ran with it. And I think it was wild to me. I geeked out when I was looking at the curriculums that were available. And just like just Danielle, when you were showing it, what was it, 14 different programs, at the Elliott School? It's like, it's not just international development that you can do. Like within international development, you can just dive in and and there is so much flexibility, which is something that I was really, really excited about. So for me, again, I applied to the three schools in the DC area. But for me, what made me choose Elliott School was truly a, the curriculum. As I started diving into the programs, I was like, this is wild. I can literally make this whatever I want it to be, wherever I want my career to go, which was just so exciting because coming from an econ background, I wanted that quantitative kind of like a focus at the same time, also being able to stay connected with international development problems. The other piece of it was really the professors. As I started looking at some of the professors at GW, and you'll see this again and again, so many of them actually work at the World Bank. They work at USAID. They work at all of these international development. So it's not just theory, it's actual practice. It's people that were just at the World Bank having a meeting with the Minister of Finance, and now they're in a classroom teaching you, right? So it's like, I think that level of just connection to real life is so, so valuable. So for me, and that was something really exciting. The professors, and then I have to say the amount of financial aid options available at GW. Definitely look into those if you qualify. It's a really cool profile. I think it does pay off. And then for me, it was also GW is literally the closest to the World Bank. I mean, it's like, and it matters when you're walking, and I'm going to do this in Celsius, when you're walking in -2-degree weather from classroom to work, from work to classroom. It matters how long your walk is. So for me, commute was a big one. I had never been to the US before. This was my first time, like, just showing up, and I think that was also something important. So Elliott School, the choice of programs, the professors, and the vicinity to the World Bank was something really important for me.
That's great. Thank you. So what knowledge or skills did you learn from your time at Elliott that you have found to be most beneficial in your career so far?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, Danielle, there were expected skills and then there were unexpected skills, right? So the expected skills, I think, I knew that if I was going to dive into it. So I had done my master's in econ from LUMS. So obviously I'd taken a lot of undergrad, postgrad classes in econ, and that was something. So I keep hearing this. The undergrad was from London School of Economics, the external degree that you do. So it was a bachelor's in econ. I'm just looking at the questions as well that popped up. So yes, so I did the external degree, the distance learning program from Islamabad for the London School of Economics, did that in econ, and then did my master's from LUMS. So actually, for any of you that are already doing an undergrad from LUMS, you almost have a head start and everything. So you're already there. So yeah, so I did my master's in econ. And I think I knew that there were going to be these skills and courses that I would get at GW that I could double down on on like, you know, basically picking up. So for instance, I was like, all right, so I'm going to learn, I can do more microeconomics, I can do more quantitative analysis. I was, as a consultant, I was doing research at the World Bank. So I was like, I can learn all of these econ skills and everything. What I did not expect, and this is the beauty about GW, when you're going to GW, you're going to Elliott School, but you're also going to GW as a whole, right? And I think what was really spectacular to me was that I ended up, you know, at GW, and I ended up working with the master's, the MBA program, and the entrepreneurship club. And I applied for this student project where, you know, they were doing these applications for Clinton Global Initiative, and I applied as a student project, and I said, I'm going to make video games for positive behavior change that can be used in international development projects. And I was like, you know what, I'm going to make a period game, and we're going to catch pads with a pair of undies, and you're going to bust menstrual myths, and you're going to learn about reproductive health. And that was kind of, you know, one of those first ideas where I was like, I'm going to do this. And I got that idea. I got the idea of social impact video games while sitting in a classroom at GW, in the econ classroom. Actually, it was with Dr. Fox, I still remember. And it was just like really interesting because, again, you know, it's like, I think the beauty you have as a student is you have this space to fail and to iterate and to tweak and to experiment. And that is not something you have in the real world when you're at work, when you have all of these demands. And I think that that's kind of the space. Like, I would have never guessed I would become a tech entrepreneur, right? And if I had not gone to GW, if I did not have that space, anyone who's an economist here, the counterfactual, I don't know what that counterfactual would look like, right? And everything. But for me, I think it was so exciting to just experiment, to be like, let me go see what this MBA world is doing. Let me go see what this business world is doing. Let me go see what the GW Entrepreneurship Club is all about. And I think I was able to do that while building my foundation in international development. So it's like, you know, I mean, it's like being at a buffet where you know what you really are there for, but then you can also like tidbit a few other pieces. And I think students have that. So for me, the unexpected skills that came out of it was learning entrepreneurship, was getting the Clinton Foundation Fellowship. It's called CGIU, the Clinton Global Initiative University. And that's something that, that actually GW takes students every single year. They've done that since year one. And they just don't take students from GW like the MBA program, from all over the university. And that's when we went. First year, around 700 students show up, and then they pick 5 students the next year to present on stage with President Clinton. And that's kind of how my journey went and everything. So, you know, I mean, I think they're like expected skills, which you're like, okay, I'm going to learn all of this stuff about international development and really up my game. And for me, that was important because I was applying for staff positions at the World Bank. Anyone who knows the international development sector knows they're extremely competitive, and GW is given a lot of prestige within the World Bank, job application process. So I knew that I needed an international degree if I wanted to go from consultant to staff, and GW just made so much sense for me.
That's fascinating. Thank you. So I'm going to jump into some of the questions that we've gotten in the chat. One thing I'll say, some of these questions are a little bit more admissions focused, so I will get to them shortly when we talk a little bit more about admissions. But here's one for you, Miriam. How easy is it to get a job while you're a current student enrolled at the Elliott School, specifically for international students? So how hard is it, or how hard or easy is it to get a job during your program?
Yeah, so I would say, and again, with the disclaimer that for me, it was the other way around. I was already coming in, I was already a consultant at the World Bank, but I had all of these class fellows who, I think, Danielle, when you were saying within 6 months, I think it was within 3 months that every single one of them had a job at within international development, even though they started without jobs when they joined the master's program. And I actually think that most of them, basically ended up doing their jobs kind of like right after year one. They would do an internship, and then often those internships kind of like, transitioned into actual full-time positions and everything. Now, I'm not going to go into the visa situation. I know there's like OPT, CPTs that you can do. I showed up on a diplomatic visa because, again, I was showing up from the World Bank. So for me, it was a little bit different. But, I mean, you can get obviously OPT, CPTs to start that process. Another thing I'm going to say, I saw a lot of people get jobs out of their capstone. So
Mhm.
like you were saying, Daniel, that's another one way where, because you get this opportunity to work in an organization, to work very closely with them, to show your value add, and you would be amazed at how many people, like we did our capstone through the World Bank because of, like, I mean, the connections I had there. And it was so cool because I could see on the other side my colleagues keeping an eye on my class fellows, being like, which one of them can I grab as a consultant at the end of this capstone, right? So you would be amazed at how many people. And now that I run my startup, I do this with capstone students all the time, where I'll do capstone projects and then kind of look for the ones that I want to hire. So I think capstone internships are really like a cool in. Look, at the end of the day, it's really about how you set yourself apart. I mean, you will have a cohort of quite a few people that are going with you, and everyone. And if you're just like, I'm a student at GW, that's cool. That does set you apart, but you have to you have to put in that extra 100 200% to really outshine and to get to your goals. So if you're like, my dream is to work at USAID, or my dream is to work at World Bank, or my dream is to work in international development or at Gates Foundation or any of these others, then you got to put in the work. But I do think that GW's gives you several different pathways to that job.
That's great.
And I think I'm getting questions on that, some of them direct messages. My startup, my not-for-profit is Grid, and my for-profit is Brashna.io, which is in the name of my in my name, in my Zoom name right now. But
Great. Thank you. How different was your GW experience from your LUMS experience?
oh, one difference that I did not see hitting me. So LUMS is a walled campus, right? So it's like, so you're at LUMS and you walk to classes and you do all of that, and that's really cool. And it's like, I mean, and there's a certain sense of like, it's all students and it's all community. Guys, this is wild to me, and maybe it's also as an international student, because I think in the US it's very common. But GW is a city campus, so you'll have like one building that's your GW building, then a World Bank building, then the IMF building, then a random burger shop, great burgers by the way, and then it's like, I mean, and then you have like, I mean, like just a CVS, and then another building and everything. So I think for me, like, one of the first things was like, what is even happening here? Where is the campus? Like, what is the campus? And I think it's really, really cool because, again, you could be in line at a grocery shop with your professor who also happens to be working at the World Bank, right? So opportunities are literally around every corner. Like, the conversations you're having are not just with fellow students, but they're with people who are in this hubbub. And I really, really, truly want to underscore that the location, the Foggy Bottom location, you're right next to the White House, you're right next to the World Bank, IMF, all of these places. So I think that really was a big difference, where I was like, wow, this is insane. And I think, to me, the master's program, the way it's set up, it is set up so you do it while at the same time you're working. I think the hours, the people, everyone around you, all of your class fellows, there's just so many opportunities to be working and studying at the same time. And that was also another difference, because at LUMS I was a full-time student. Like, that was my only job. And I think at GW I was working and studying. So that was another difference. And then the last difference that I think is truly valuable is GW is very practical, and it's very, very job focused. It's very real world focused. So it's like, I mean, it's not going to matter whether it's an open book test or a closed book. Like, it's not like what test you're doing or like how much I mean, your professors are willing to work with you. I would literally do my papers as I was on a flight to Botswana while working for the World Bank on a long haul flight. And I would be like, hey, you know what? I'm going to send this as soon as I land. That's going to be 6 hours late. And my professor was like, that's okay. The more important part is you get it done. But then let me know what you learned from the Botswana experience, because put that in there, right? So it's like, I mean, it's very, the value, the quality matters more, rather than, it's not very testy. It's not very like, hey, I mean, obviously your GPA matters. I think at GW, I graduated with a 3.9. So it's like, I mean, like, yes, it matters, but I do think that what really matters is the quality of what you're producing. And a lot of it is linked. So many times I picked up tasks I was doing at work and then like kind of leveraged the assignments I was doing to get more, inputs on what I was doing at LUMS.
Wonderful. So there's a couple questions about funding opportunities and things like that. So I will talk a little bit about the Elliott School Fellowships and how that process works. But can you talk a little bit, and you mentioned this in one of your responses earlier, can you talk a little bit about what funding opportunities you were able to take advantage of as a student?
Oh God, Danielle, that's going to be hard because this is like around 10 years ago now and everything. So I think it was the Elliott School. I mean, I think I applied. Guys, I'm one of those, like, throughout my life, I whitewashed the place with opportunities and applications. I applied to everything and anything.
Ooh.
And I think that's what you got to do. So I wouldn't remember exactly the name of the scholarship, but I know that, it was through GW.
Okay, perfect. That's great. I'll talk about that more, but just wanted to see if you had a different perspective on it. So one other question that we got in here that, again, I can kind of address from a technical perspective, but also curious your thoughts on it. So there's a question asking, can I graduate with a sociology and anthropology background and get into the International Development Studies program? So one thing I want to say to this is you are not required to have any specific major or experience or background in order to get into any of our master's programs, other than our mid-career program that's a little bit different. But for the most part, we accept students with backgrounds in any number of things. And often we're looking for folks who do come in with some different backgrounds. So Miriam, do you have any perspective on that in terms of, obviously you've given your perspective on your background, but in terms of your classmates and what kind of backgrounds they came in with and how that had an effect on your classroom experience?
Yeah, 100%, Danielle. I mean, I really do believe at GW they see you for who you are and they value you for who you are and the diversity of experiences. Like I was expecting a very LUMS like cohort, which is like everyone's econ focused, everyone's like very numbers oriented. And when I got to GW, like we had Peace Corps people, we had people that again had done more anthropology, like it's like, I mean, I think we had an English major. It's like, I mean, it really, really, truly is about who you are and your interest in international development. And I think that's where your personal statement and your all of those things become really important, is for you to showcase why this is relevant for you and always think about it like, okay, what do you get out of the university, but also what value do you add to that cohort? I think GW really does value the cohort experience because a lot of it is group thinking, a lot of it is group work. Capstone projects are all group work. So truly the experience you'll have at GW will depend on who your classmates are. And I think I actually applaud the admissions teams on choosing very, very intentionally who comes together. And I think the debates I still remember with one of my best friends, was who came out of the school. Like we became best friends later on. We were bridesmaids at each other's weddings and everything. But it's like truly what came out of it was she was very grassroots oriented. Peace Corps, you got to go deep, you got to go micro, if you want to make a difference. And I was very World Bank, massive scale, like, you got to go big, you got to go broad. And I think so many of our conversations were like, depth versus breadth, and like, do you sit in an ivory tower and make policies, or do you go down and live in a village for 9 months and everything, right? And I think like those are that richness of dialogue and experiences is what's going to make it really special. So no, I don't think there was just a very big variety of backgrounds, as long as you're able to prove that value that you bring to the table. I'm also going to say I'm getting people that are sending me direct messages and questions. So if you could just send it to everyone, because then I'm not keeping an eye on the chat.
Yeah. Yeah, please send those to everyone, to the whole group, and feel free to send them to everyone instead of directly to me so that everyone can see that a question has been asked. So thanks for that note. So with that, let me go ahead and touch on some of the admissions requirements and some funding opportunities, since we've gotten some questions about those, and then we can see what other questions you all have that I haven't answered. So definitely feel free to keep those questions coming in. Just make sure that you address them to everyone. Okay, so let me go ahead and pull up the rest of the presentation. Okay, so I will just briefly go over some of our application prerequisites, required materials, and deadlines. So the first thing to note is that some of our programs have 1 or 2 prerequisites, some have none at all. I mentioned our mid-career program earlier. That does require 7 years of work experience in order to apply. So some of our MA programs have prerequisites in either foreign language, economics, or both. Our new MS program that I mentioned also has a calculus prerequisite. So it gets a little bit confusing about what is all required from each program. So you can find all of that information on our website, specifically spelled out about what prerequisites are required for each program and how you can fulfill those. You will need to fill out an online application. The application fee will be waived by attending this info session. There's an option at the end of your application to request a fee waiver, and I will send an email after this session with the instructions about how to request that fee waiver. You will need to submit a resume or CV and your statement of purpose. There are 2 prompts to choose from for your statement of purpose, which can be found on our website. And we touched on this a little bit, but in this statement of purpose, we're really looking for you to connect the dots for us between your background as well as your future career aspirations, kind of tying those things together and telling us how the Elliott School and a degree from our university would help you achieve those goals. We require 2 letters of recommendation. Generally, we ask that you submit 1 academic reference and 1 professional reference. We do require transcripts from all institutions attended, so that would be LUMS and any other universities that you may have attended. And we also require translations of those transcripts if they are not in English. International students are required to submit English language test scores. I did see a question about this in the chat. We accept TOEFL, IELTS, PTE, and Duolingo. If you have graduated with a degree from within the US, then this would be waived. So if any of you all are getting your master's degree from LUMS or have previously gotten a degree from within the US, then it would be waived. Otherwise, that is required of all of our applicants. And then finally, most of our programs are test blind when it comes to the GRE. So that means that we don't accept GRE scores whatsoever. There are a couple of programs that do still accept GRE as test optional, but none of our programs require GRE scores, and it is a very small percentage of students that still choose to send in their scores to those couple of programs. So generally, I would say, don't worry about submitting your GRE. It is never required. And doesn't have a major impact on your admission. So here you can see the deadlines by which you need to submit your application in order to be considered for Elliott School fellowships. So if you are applying for our fall term, you want to submit your application by January 7th. And that is the term that starts in August. If you're applying for the spring semester, which starts in January, then you'll want to submit your application by October 1st. So all that you need to do is submit your application and all of your materials by these deadlines and indicate on your application that you want to be considered for fellowships. Basically, there's just a question that asks if you want to be considered for fellowships. And if you say yes, then we will automatically consider you. You don't have to submit any additional supplemental materials in order to be considered for Elliott School fellowships. Now, keep in mind that these are partial tuition scholarships at the Elliott School. We typically offer anywhere between $2,000 and $10,000 per semester. So it's usually no more than half of tuition that we cover. So like Miriam was saying, you want to submit applications to other scholarships in addition to the Elliott School fellowships. We have a lot of information on our website about different funding opportunities that you can apply for outside of the Elliott School fellowships. And we strongly recommend that you do that and take some time to look through all of those opportunities, find out what those deadlines are, but you would need to go about that outside of and separate from your Elliott School admissions process. So I do have some questions in the chat that I will get to. So I do just want to say that if you have any questions that come up after this session or any that we don't get to in the time that we have here, make sure you send us an email. We are here for you. We want to make sure that you get all the information you need so you can make this really important decision. So you see our email address there. You would have gotten some emails from us already. So it's that esiagrad@gw.edu if you want to jot that down. And make sure that you send us any questions you have. We'd be happy to answer them. So let me go ahead and go into the chat and see what questions have come up. I know there's a question about cumulative GPA. So we don't have a GPA requirement, a minimum requirement. So if you have a GPA that is maybe on the lower side of what you would want it to look like, that just means that we're going to look more closely at some of the other materials that you submit. So in addition to looking at your cumulative GPA, we also are going to look specifically at the grades that you got in specific courses, depending on how relevant those courses are to courses that you would be taking at the Elliott School. That might factor into the decision. We might look to see if your grades went up throughout your tenure. So if you started off your first year in undergrad with a lower GPA and then improved it throughout your time at the university, that's something that we would look favorably on. We're going to look at your academic letter of recommendation and take a look at what the strengths and weaknesses are that your recommender points out there. So those are things that are really important for us to look at as well. The average incoming GPA from our class last year was just a little bit above a 3.5. I think it was 3.54. This is on a 4.0 scale. So that's just the average. Of course, that means we admit students with a higher GPA and with a lower GPA, but that can just kind of give you a sense of what we might be looking for. I know somebody had asked about on-campus work opportunities. So as Miriam mentioned, it gets a little bit tricky with visa requirements, but there are opportunities for on-campus work. And generally, I won't say 100% of the time because the stuff can always vary, but generally you can start working on campus in a part-time position starting in your first semester. You would be able to then start applying to work off campus in CPT, curricular practical training, typically starting after your first semester. All of that is stuff that our International Services Office, the ISO office, can help you with, as well as your career coach. They know lots about that process, so they can help you with that. Let's see. When do we apply for grad school? Great question. So our fall 2025 application, so that's the courses that start in August of 2025, that application is currently open, so you can apply for that now. And the deadline to be considered for funding is January 7th. I will let you know that we are switching to a new application system, so there's going to be a little bit of a pause before next spring and fall's applications are open, but just send us an email if you have any questions about those timelines. The Elliott School does have undergraduate programs as well as graduate programs. You would just, if somebody's interested in applying for undergrad, that would be through the regular George Washington University common application. When is your career coach assigned to you? Great question. So you will be able to start meeting with your career coach about 1 month before your classes start. We will send an email after you submit your deposit that tells us that you're planning to attend the Elliott School, and it'll give you the exact timelines of when you can start meeting with your academic advisor as well as with your career coach. But typically it's about 1 month before your classes start. The typical fee for your MA program, if you're talking about application fee, that's $80. And like I mentioned, it will be waived for attending this session. If you're talking about tuition, so we charge tuition based on the cost per credit hour. Most of our programs are 40 credits. The new MS program in International Science and Technology Policy is, in International Economic Policy is the new MS. That is going to be 30 credits. So you would take that and multiply it by the current cost of tuition. I believe the current cost of tuition is a little bit over $2,000 per credit. I think it's $2,150 if I'm remembering correctly. That does change each year. It typically goes up between 2 to 5%, but you can do that math to give yourself a little bit of an estimate on what that would be. And keep in mind that you would only pay tuition based on the number of credits that you're registered for in that semester. So full-time students typically register for 9 or 10 credits per semester. So you can do a little bit of that math to figure out exactly or a kind of general estimate of what that would be. All right, that is just about all the time that we have today. So make sure that you send us an email if you have any questions that we didn't get a chance to answer here. We would always be happy to answer those. But I want to say thank you all so much for joining us today. I hope this was helpful. I hope you got at least most of your questions answered so that you can feel that you are ready to make this important decision with confidence.
Danielle, there's one more question a student has asked. It's a pretty lengthy question. Wait, let me read it. First of all, Danielle and Mariam, thank you so much for the very insightful session. It is incredibly helpful for all of us. I have a question regarding the best path to take as a senior year student at LUMS majoring in economics. Would you recommend applying to GW for a master's program right after graduation, or would it be more valuable to gain some experience first, perhaps at an organization like the World Bank's Pakistan office or another relevant institution before pursuing graduate studies? If gaining experience before starting the master's program would be beneficial, could you share any advice on how to secure a position at a place like the World Bank Pakistan office? I think this is directed more towards Mariam, as they've mentioned.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I don't think there's a right way. I actually think, especially after your undergrad, like you can go and directly apply to Elliott School. Like if I could imagine a faster way of getting to the World Bank, I would just like do my undergrad, apply to GW, maybe do one master's rather than two master's degrees, and start working at the World Bank internationally, right? And everything. So I don't think that there's a right or wrong. Again, like I said, because GW gives you such a hands-on work experience, you can almost do both. So I would say, yeah, it's totally fine if you want to jump right into it right after your undergrad and apply and get a head start. But I would also say if you're like, hey, let me take a little bit of a break, let me go dabble in again as an undergrad. It will be harder. To get a job even at the country office at the World Bank, because even they require graduate students. So then you'd have to maybe do another master's and then another, all of that. So I mean, everyone has their own path, but I think diving right in, I mean, you guys are getting this session. I did not get this session at the end of my undergrad. So you're getting all of this information from Danielle. That's super useful. Guys, please, please, please look at the websites, do your research, apply to all of the opportunities. I would dive right in.
Yeah, that's great. And just to kind of give an idea of averages, I would say the majority of our students come in with about 1 to 3 years of work experience on average, particularly so in the development studies program. But we do have about 25 to 40% of our incoming students are coming directly from undergrad. So it's definitely something that people do. Like I mentioned, only our mid-career program has an actual requirement for years of work experience. And so if we felt that it was really important that you came in with work experience, it would be a requirement. So we are certainly happy to welcome folks in who are coming directly from undergrad. But there are some students who come in with 1 to 3 years of work experience, and certainly folks who come in with more work experience. So you'll have a kind of variety of experiences in the classroom there. But just like Miriam said, there's no one kind of right or wrong answer there. Does the Elliott School have any summer school programs for undergraduate students? That's a great question. So we do have, it's called U.S. Foreign Policy. It is generally for current Elliott School students as well as current professionals that are working in the field, either in Washington, D.C. or elsewhere. The program does admit some undergraduate students with a really strong academic profile. So understanding that you would be in this 2-week course with folks who are, kind of currently working professionals in international affairs, there would be a little bit of a higher standard there. But we do sometimes admit undergraduate students to that. So if you look for that program on our website, it would be there's like a special program sort of section of our website that's called US Foreign Policy. If that's something that you're interested in, you can also send us an email so we can send you that link. But that's the only program we have for current undergraduate students in terms of like summer programs. All right, that is the end of our time. I don't want to keep you all any longer, so please go ahead and send us an email if you have any other questions. And let me just put our email in the chat just to make sure everyone has that. There's our email address. We're happy to answer those questions for you. But once again, I want to say thank you so much to Miriam for joining us and sharing your wonderful experiences today. It's always so fantastic to hear from you. I also want to say a huge thank you to the Career Services team at LUMS for helping organize this. Thank you all for joining. I hope this was helpful, and I hope that we'll hear from you soon.
Thank you so much, Mariam and Daniel. Thank you so much for organizing the session. It was really insightful. I hope the students find it as insightful as they've said in the chat box. And we look out for more sessions, hopefully in the future. I think this was pretty helpful.
Great. Wonderful. I'm so glad. Thank you all so much.
Thanks,
Hope you have a
everyone.
great
See you in
you.
DC. Bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.